hello grade 12 learners. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share so that you can get more content relating to schoolwork. Today we will be dealing with history when it comes to the US Civil Rights Movement. We have to know what is the US Civil Rights Movement. The question, you will always find it in your source based. So many learners, they face a problem when it comes to US civil rights movement. So today I will first give you the reasons for the US civil rights movement. Secondly, I will also give you the origins of the civil rights movement in the USA, in the United States of America. Without wasting a lot of time, let me just give you the reason and the origin of what the civil rights movement. When I speak about the reason, why was the civil rights movement implemented, and then when I speak about the origin, how did it develop, how did it come developed in the United States of America in 1950s and 1960s. So let me just give you the reason why the Black Power, the civil rights movement was implemented, and who were the key play of the civil rights movement. Number one, many African Americans people believed that their life would change after the World War. That's the first thing that you should know. Many African Americans, when I speak about African Americans, I speak about Black Americans. I speak about Black people in the United States of America. The reason and the origins of the civil rights movement in the United States, it's because of many African Americans people believed that their life would change after the World War. Number two, they had fought for their country and expected to be treated equally. That's the main thing that made the civil rights movement to be implemented in the United States of America. It's because of they fought for their country and they expected to be treated equally. Number two, Black African Americans activists were frustrated. They were also frustrated. We have to know what is the main reason for them to be frustrated. Number one, the federal and state government lack of action to implement the desegregation. They were frustrated because of what? Because of the federal and state of government lack of action to do what? To implement desegregation. When we speak about desegregation, we are speaking about not separating people according to their language, according to the color. Because when we speak about segregation, we are speaking about separating people, sort of a discrimination. They were also angered by the huge resistance of white Americans against the ending of segregation and the ongoing violence against Black people, particularly in the southern states. They were also angered. They became angry because why? Because white people in the United States of America, or white Americans, they were resisting on the ending of the segregation in the United States of America, particularly in the southern states. It was in the context that the civil resistance, the civil rights movement emerged. That's what made the civil rights movement to be emerged, is because of Black people, they wanted to do to end segregation in the United States of America. But there were certain white people who were doing who were against the ending of the segregation in the United States of America. Now we go to the role and the influence of Martin Luther King Jr. We go to the role and the influence of who? Martin Luther King Jr. We have to know how old was Martin Luther King Jr. What did he become, what are the challenges that he did challenge as the political activist, as the black activist. Number one, Martin Luther King Jr. was 26 years old when he was appointed as a Baptist minister of Motogong. At the beginning of Motogong boycott, Martin Luther King Jr. spoke to a large congregation of people at Holt Street Baptist Church in Motogong. That's the second thing that we must know about Martin Luther King Jr. Number three, he became the spokesperson for African Americans' rights. He became the spokesperson of who? Of African Americans' rights. He was speaking for For black African Americans' rights. He was the spokesperson. Number three, that we must know about Martin Luther King Jr. He challenged racial segregation and injustice where in the United States of America. He did what? He challenged the racial segregation and and injustice. That means he was challenging injustice. He wanted justice, and he wanted to end the segregation where in the United States of America. He was a gifted speaker. He believed in using non-violent protest. He believed in using non-violent protest. I keep quiet because I wanted to enter in your mind. He believed in using non-violent protest. Martin Luther King Jr. had been influenced by the liberation struggle with Gandhi led against the British colonial rule in India. He was influenced by who? By Gandhi, the one who was leading the struggle where in British colonized rule in India. That means India was colonized by British. And then Gandhi started to do to fight using non-violent protest, which is he was using passive resistance to do to be independent, as their India today it's independent. So Martin Luther King Jr. was influenced by the strategy of Gandhi, who was fighting against British on their liberation of their country of India. I hope you are going with me. You are not getting lost. India gained its independence in 1947. That is what made Martin Luther King Jr. thought that the method or the strategy of non-violence or of being passive resistance is going to help them to get their freedom as the black African Americans. Martin Luther King Jr. adapted Gandhi's passive resistance in America, as I explained. He believed that such action could win full civil rights for the black people in America. He believed that such actions of passive resistance could be could win full civil rights for black people in America. People from all religions as well as non-believers embraced his call for non-violent civil disobedience. That means people they were in the religions and people who are non-believers, they started to do to support him because of using the strategy of non-violence. Then there are forms of protest that we must know that happened, whereby now we are about to talk about Rosa Parks. We have to know the forms of protest that were played by the black activists to liberate themselves from the apartheid government or from the segregation. There was Motogong bus boycott. we have to know what is a bus boycott. There were sit-ins. They did so many different of protests. So today I will explain those protests that they were doing. But now I have to start with what? Motorgom, bus boycott. We have to know at the first phase of civil rights movement was sparked off by who? Rosa Parks' arrest in what? December 1955. Rosa Parks was arrested when? 1955 in December. That's the phase, that's the first phase of what? Civil rights movement was sparked off by who? Rosa Parks' arrest in December 1955. That means when we speak about it was what? A civil rights movement was sparked off by Rosa Parks' arrest in 1955 December. We are simply saying that what Rosa Parks did or made, or what she did, it made other African Americans to realize that no, we have to be like her. We have to fight for ourselves so that we can get our freedom as black African Americans. Rosa Parks, civil rights activist, boarded a city bus and moved to the back where African Americans were required to sit. Can you please hear this sentence very well? Rosa Parks, civil resistance activist, boarded a city bus and moved to the back where black people were supposed to sit. I hope you understand. There were certain seats that white people, they are not supposed to sit. It's the seats of black people. There were certain seats that black people, they were not supposed to sit. Only white people sit there. So now Rosa Parks got inside the bus and entered and moved where black people were supposed to sit. As a bus filled up, Parks was asked by the bus driver to give her seat to a white man. She refused. Remember, Rosa Parks got inside the bus and went where they said that black people, they belong to. Then the bus was what? Filled up. Then the bus driver went to who? Rosa Parks and asked that you must stand up and this white man must sit. Then Rosa Parks refused. She refused to do that. That thing made so many Americans, so many black African Americans to see that no, man, we have to fight for ourselves. We have to be inspired by what Rosa Parks did. Now we will go to the sit-ins. We have to know what happens in the sit-ins. We will go to the Students' Guild. We will go to the Freedom Rides. We will go to the it's hard to pronounce this word for me, but it's Birmingham campaign, which is BIRMINGHAM. Now we have to know what happens in the sit-ins. Number one, students also played an important role in the civil rights movement. Students also did what? Play an important role in what? In the civil rights movement. In 1960, a group of students in Greensboro sat down at a white-only lodge quarter and waited to be served. Do you see what are they doing? They went to a place that was white-only lodge quarter, and they waited to be served. The waiting staff ignored them, which is the staff did not wanted to help them or serve them because they were in the seats of what? White people. So they decided to do what? To ignore them. Then the students sat peacefully and refused to move. They sat peacefully and refused to move. They sat down peacefully and refused to move. Remember, who is the person that started to refuse to move or to be moved? It's Rosa Parks in the bus. That thing influenced so many black African Americans that no, we have to be like that woman. What they are doing is not right. So now the students started to do what? To do the sit-ins. Students also played an important role in what? Civil rights movement. By what? In 1960, a group of students in Greensboro sat down at a white-only lunch counter and waited to be served. Then the waiting staff ignored them, did not want to help them because they were sitting where they said only white people they are allowed to sit there. The students sat peacefully and refused to move. They sat peacefully and refused to move where they were sitting. That's a sit-in. That's a way of boycott. That's a way of protesting. The next day, this is interesting. The next day, a large group of students returned and resumed their protest. The next day, the large group of students returned where? To the lunch quarter. And resumed their protest. They continued with their protest. They continued where they stopped yesterday. I hope you are understanding the civil rights resistance. Their courageous action inspired others. Within 2 weeks, there had been similar protests in 11 cities. Students were arrested. Their actions inspired others. In 2 weeks, there had been similar protests where 11 cities. That means what they did in the lunch quarter of white people, it was starting to spread wide. It started to spread to how many cities? 11 cities. And then the students were arrested. Now we go to what? The student healed. They were read-ins. They did what? Read-in. What is a read-in? At a segregated libraries. They went to the libraries that they were not allowed to enter. The students went where? To the libraries that they were not allowed to enter and started to do what? Read books. Number 2, waded in at a segregated benches. They started to sit in the benches that they were segregated as black people. They went to the benches that only white people were allowed to sit there. But the students decided to do what? To go there and sit. And they decided to go to the libraries that they were forbidden to go there and started to read the books. That's a way of what? That's a way of protesting. That's how we protest. Slept in lobbies of segregated hotels. They even went to the hotels that they were segregated, where they were forbidden to enter because of their skin color. But they decided to do what? To go there and sleep in those hotels. That's a way of what? Protesting. That means that shows that the students were protesting against the government of segregation. Now we go to what? Freedom rights. We have to know on the freedom rights what happened. Although segregation on buses had been ruled unconstitutionally, segregation was still practiced in southern states. In May 1961, an interracial group of 13 students traveled on a Greyhound buses from Washington, D.C. to the south. The segregation was still continuing. Now the students decided to do what? To travel from what? Greenwood buses to, from Washington to what? Greenwood buses. These protests became known as a Freedom Riders. Now they are given a name. They are what? A Freedom Riders. Now we go to what? Birmingham campaign. Birmingham campaign. I have a problem when it comes to pronounce this word. So, but don't worry, I'm sure you are seeing it on the screen because I'm writing it. Now we go to what? Birmingham campaign. We have to know what happened in the Birmingham campaign. Early 1963, Martin Luther King Jr. and the SCLC organized an economic boycott of white businesses and series of protest marches in Birmingham, Alabama. That's the place. To desegregate Birmingham's downtown department stores. They did what? They organized an economic boycott of white businesses, which is they went to the white businesses to boycott or protest. Many were arrested, including what? Martin Luther King Jr. Birmingham business leaders decided that the protest campaign was bad for the business, agreed to desegregate their lunch counters, restrooms, and drinking fountains. The jailed protesters were set free. In Birmingham, Martin Luther King Jr. took an controversial decision to enlist school children to join demonstration. Now he do what? He encouraged school learners to join what? The protest or the the demonstration. On 2 May 1963, thousands of black children gathered at the Baptist church instead of going to their school. Now they are no longer going to school. Remember, the government or the apartheid government is expecting that school learners, they will go to school, but now they are not going to school. They are going where? To the Baptist church to gather instead of doing what? Instead of going to school. That's a way of protesting. There is nothing wrong about you protesting. You have the right to protest. You have a right to protest. That means when you protest, that means you have spoken, but they did not hear you. They are not hearing you. So you have a right to protest. You have a right to protest anywhere. Even in the police station, you can go and protest. That's your right. Even at school, you can protest if you are not happy about the decisions that they are making. In a groups of 50, they marched straight into the what? Into the full force of Birmingham's white police. Remember, they first gathered where? In the Baptist church. Now they went out in the group of 50 to do what? To march to what? Birmingham. White police, they went there. Birmingham, it's a white police campaign that was happening. The Commissioner of Public Safety, Eugene Bull, corner ordered high pressure water hoses be used against what the children's crescent, hence it became known. Now they started to use what? The big hoses of water to pure the children's. Over 500 children were arrested that day. Thousands were traumatized. Newspaper, radio, televisions, reporters, cameramen, documented event in Birmingham, making sure it received nationally and internationally attention. They made sure that this thing goes viral so that it can get what the international attention. Now we move forward. Americans were made aware of brutal attacks on people by Birmingham police. Many Americans were shocked and support for civil rights movement. Many Americans, they started to be shocked and support for the civil rights rights movement. And what happened? The civil rights movement started to grow. Now we go to the response of Canada's. Who's Canada's? Canada's was the president of the United States of America in 1963. Now we have to know the response of Canada's after these protests and so forth and so on, and the brutal of the police and so forth and so on, and the arrest of kids and the sit-ins that they were happening. So we have to know the response of Canada's. President Canada was faced with a public outcry after treatment of black people in southern states. He was faced with what? A public outcry. That means the public was crying to who? Canada's, which is the president. He was faced by what? People were crying upon him. June 1963, President Canada went on television to make a public statement about the situation in Birmingham. He declared that racial segregation had no place in American life. This was a great victory for the civil rights movement. Now we go to March to Lincoln Memorial. Now we go to March to Lincoln Memorial. In 1963, black unemployment stood at 11%. It was in the context of inequality that Philip Rothfeld, a 74-year-old veteran activist, decided to organize a march on Washington. This march became known as the March of Washington for Jobs and Freedom. Despite initial fears that it would result in more violence, the president descended on Washington. It was a large demonstration for human and civil rights in Americans' history, and it was peaceful. It was Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream to have speech, though which is remembered. On the 22 November 1963, President Canada was assassinated. President Canada was assassinated in 1963 on the 2nd of November. Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act on the 2 July 1964. So the notes that I am giving you, they are going to help you when it comes to your final examination, when you are about to face the source-based. You will be able to know what does the source-based all about. But for you to go and approach the source-based without knowing what I am giving you, it's going to be hard for you to pass your source-based. Selma motor gun marches. In the 1965, Martin Luther King Jr. led a demonstration to Motorgun Abalam. Two marchers to Motorgun failed as a result of state troopers blocked the marches at Odom Bates Bridge across the Alabama River, which is they failed to march because the troops, what are the troops? The troops are soldiers that walk, carrying guns. So they blocked them from marching. So Martin Luther King Jr. and his team or the demonstration failed. Accompanied by federal troops to Montgomery, black people be allowed to register to vote. Now black people, they are being what? Allowed to register to vote. Guys, please don't skip the ads. Don't skip the ads. Don't skip the ads. I beg you, don't skip the ad. Whenever you see an ad playing on my videos, please don't skip it. The first attempt to complete the march ended in an event called Blood Sunday. State troops attacked peaceful demonstrators with whips and batons. President Johnson, upon Congress to work with him around the clock to prepare new federal legislation to secure rights of all people to vote. On the 6th August 1965, Johnson signed Voting Rights Act, which eliminated all voting literacy tests, poll tax, and other legal loopholes which had been used to prevent black people from registering to vote in southern states. That means they were now allowing black people to vote in the United States of America. The civil rights movement achieved its aim of equality before the law. That means the civil rights movement was successful on doing what? On bringing the equality on the law. Now we go to the short-term and long-term gains of the civil rights movement. As the President Johnson signed a Voting Rights Act into law in 1965, Martin Luther King Jr. had mobilized thousands of black and white Americans to participate in a campaign of civil disobedience between 1955 and 1965. The signing of 1964 Civil Rights Act and the 1965 Voting Act were important gains for the civil rights movement. It was important for the civil rights movement because they've been fighting for it all these years. The civil rights movement argued as racial segregation in South. Then prejudice did not disappear with new legislation, and African Americans still faced racial discrimination. That means the discrimination did not end. They were still facing the discrimination. Many African Americans rejected Martin Luther King Jr. philosophy of non-violence. That means Martin Luther King Jr. was failing to bring change in the lives of black African Americans. So now the black African Americans started to do started to reject his method or the strategy of being non-violent. They believed that a more militant approach to white racism was necessary and adapted by the slogan of the Black Power movement. That's where Malcolm X started to be involved. So now we were dealing with the civil rights movement. So now it gone to the essay of Black Power movement. This is a continuation, but this one was the source based, and then that one is the essay. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and share so that you can get more content relating to schoolwork.